Hey guys, Jason here, coming at you today from the back porch of the farmhouse. This is going to be a very different video than what I typically do out in the field with the rotational grazing. It's going to be a difficult video. It's going to be graphic. If you don't like that kind of stuff, click off, go somewhere else. If you're a small homestead, a small producer, ruminant animals especially, I would encourage you to hang around through this entire video. I think I've got some useful information for you. So we've had a very tough end of the week last week on the homestead here. So many times with farm life, I've discovered over these 6 years, when you think you have it figured out, when you think you've got it nailed down, the farm has this very unique way of dealing you a heaping portion of humble pie to chew on. And that's exactly what happened this past week. So, this is one of those times I come to you humbly today. I'm humbled. I'm gonna share about an experience that we had here in an attempt to be transparent. I think that's important. I know we've got a lot of small homesteads that watch your channel and tune in, and I don't want to let you down. I personally believe that as a society and culture, we are on the edge of total chaos. And I think that when that breaks out, these small homesteads and small communities are going to be the new backbone of the new culture. And so I want you to succeed. I want you to do well. And I'm just hoping that there's somebody out there that can learn from these mistakes that I've made. Hoping that it helps somebody somewhere on down the line. That thought alone is redemptive to me. Last Thursday, we moved cattle. That last video I did, we moved cattle from paddock 1 onto paddock 2, cattle and sheep. And when we moved into paddock 2, the grasses were just amazingly lush, amazingly green. We have had all the rain that we've wanted or needed and more. We've got 3 inches over Labor Day weekend. We've had another, I think, over an inch since then. The pasture grasses this year have just been phenomenal. They've been phenomenal, and this was no exception. We're coming into fall here, so we're getting into cool season grass time, and cool season grasses are really taking off out there. And after I moved cattle, we did the video, everything looked great. I moved them. They had been out there, moved them in the morning. They'd been out there for a few hours. Noticed early afternoon, they weren't lying down ruminating, they were standing around, and I noticed some drooling. Didn't think a whole lot of it because the sun was out, full sun. There's no shade over there in paddock 2. I thought, well, they're hot. Continued to monitor things, and they seemed to get a little bit worse throughout the afternoon. So I went and got some hay, and I threw some hay out there, and just to kind of balance that rumen with all that fresh grass. Now, talking green, lush grass, there's an issue called grass tetany. And grass tetany is basically when, it happens mainly in the spring, but it's when cattle are consuming very lush, very green forages. Those cool season forages peak in the spring, but then they also go up somewhat in the fall. So it also has to do with magnesium. We'll get into all this, but basically that's what we were dealing with here. I did not know that. Threw some hay out. That was a good move. Cattle began consuming that, and I kept an eye on them, a close eye, but came out about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I noticed one of the heifers started to stagger. She started to kind of to stammer, almost like she's drunk. And at that point, I knew exactly what we were dealing with: grass staggers, grass tetany, and I knew I had to get magnesium to her. I immediately opened the pastures up, ran them up front to the barn, got this young heifer in the head gate, and Sam and I began administering magnesium sulfate in an attempt to save her. You know, after we gave her the magnesium, she came out into the barnyard area and laid down. I called the vet to get him here to see if there was anything he could do. He did not pick up. And in the meantime, she began to suffer, very, very badly on the ground. And I made the decision to put her down. I had just dispatched Ella, and wasn't long after that the vet called me back. And of course, at that point, there's nothing obviously that can be done. But we had a chance to talk through things. He was confirming what I thought we were dealing with, which was grass tetany. Basically saying that it's a magnesium deficiency. And we've since learned a whole lot about this. But to keep things simple, we had been in paddock 1, and I think I had kept them there until the forage was eaten down pretty low, and so they were hungry. I mean, they were real hungry. And then we had immediately moved to paddock 2, very, very lush, cool season grasses. You're okay with legumes. Legumes have magnesium, but these cool season grasses, and of course we're 100% grass fed, and it blows my mind that what these animals need to survive and eat is the same thing that can kill them. The vet is suggesting a high magnesium mineral. It's caused us to step back, re-examine our mineral program here. So after Ella had passed, and she's still there, and the vet had called, we'd talked through things. I just spent some time kneeling next to her and just being in the moment. And, wife and family came out, and it was just a sacred moment there, right, with your animal. This animal, Ella, she was our first calf born here on the farm, November 11th, 2020. She was born here. We raised her, and she died here. And just a sacred moment there of no words with the family to just appreciate this animal and be in this moment, however uncomfortable that is. And then once that had passed, 7:30 p.m. and the practical side starts to set in, right? I don't have a way to dig a huge hole. And darkness is setting in. Coyotes are going to be here before long when it gets light the next day. Vultures are going to be here. So there's a practical side to this that really causes me to, pull it together here, and I gotta figure this out. Being there in the moment, thinking through this, what do I do? Well, I pretty much come to the conclusion that I'm going to have to cut her up to get her in the ground. And, I just thought if I'm going to cut her up, I'm going to honor this animal in the best way I know how. And the best way I know how to do that is to harvest her. And so that's what I did Thursday night. I worked pretty much all night, and I harvested her Native American style. Remove the head, remove the legs. I can't move her. And so it's pretty much a matter of, splitting that hide then, putting that down on the ground to act as a protection for the meat, and then, putting the head and the legs in a hole and being able to rotate that carcass back and forth and getting that hide off and then coming straight down the middle, opening her up, used a handsaw and a knife pretty much. Used a Sawzall a couple times to get the legs and head off, and then opened her up, used a handsaw on the sternum. Toughest part was probably the pelvic bone and area, and sawing through that and making sure that I didn't nick the intestinal tube there at the anus. obviously don't want to cut into that. So getting through that pelvic bone and being able to then remove that tube, remove the esophagus from the other end, and kind of just peel the inside, the stomach, and the insides out, get those in the hole, get dirt on that stuff, and then I've got a meat carcass that's left. And started in on that. We've done chickens and turkeys here. That was very helpful because I had an idea of the process, but just with tetany, with grass tetany, it's the stomach, it's the rumen, so the meat is not tainted. It's still very good, and so hundreds and hundreds of pounds of meat off this animal. We've been processing. Goal that night was to just get it quartered and get it into we have a large chest freezer where we age our chickens and turkeys. I have a control for the chest freezer that makes it stay at 40 degrees. And we can age meat that way. So we've been aging the carcass in there, but I did pull some out, and I made up some ground beef already, and we've tried that, and just delicious, super lean meat, just delicious. Obviously high in omega-3s, very healthy source of protein. But there are many elements and facets to this now, and I'm just going to pick a few here. Emotionally, with death on the farm, you kind of have two camps, right? You've got this the butchering side that you deal with, and then you have these unplanned catastrophes. And the catastrophes are just infinitely harder to handle emotionally, and I think it's just because there's no way to make logical sense of things in the moment, right? And it's just like you're dealt a bad hand and you've got to deal with it, and it doesn't fit. Many times there's no explanation or reason. It just happens, and there you are, and you're left to deal with it. And so the farmer has to sit with that. You've got to sit with that and probably never really be okay with it. Spiritually, as a follower of Jesus, I'm opposed to death. He's conquered death. I don't agree with death. I don't come under it. I don't want it. Yet, at the same time, there's this paradox that without death, at least in our present reality, there can be no life. And you think that through, and it's like it doesn't really matter if you're watching this and you're disgusted because you don't eat meat. It doesn't matter if you eat meat or something else. If you're watching this, you're eating something, and so there is something that's dying in order to give you life, and that's just the way that this present reality is. And so the farm, it becomes a place, like it or not, where this reality is wrestled with, and it's lived out, and it's from the smallest microbial creatures making compost and dying, and to the largest beef animal. Initially, I pulled them off to put Ella through the head gate, and I've left them up front near the barn area. I've been putting out hay and feeding them every day, and I've also been putting out magnesium sulfate in the water, and that's just Epsom salts. That's just in an attempt to raise magnesium levels. Now, since did that through the weekend, today's Monday. Since then, I've been able to really dig into this, and I believe we have a magnesium deficiency in our cattle, and if it's in our cattle, it's in our sheep as well. I start to dig into this. The first thing I do is I contact our feed supplier. Our feed supplier originally gave us the advice for our present mineral program, which is just, and this is the important part that I want you small homesteaders pay attention here, because a lot of people are getting this advice. It's on forums, it's out there. Oh, just take organic kelp and mix organic kelp with salt, equal parts weight, and you're good to go. If you've got your animals on pasture, there's so much that the pasture makes up for, right? So, you're good to go. Here, we even run them in the woods. They get browse and leaves off the trees. Well, it's not enough. It's not enough. We have a magnesium deficiency. You know, we were given that advice from our feed supplier, have since followed up with them, and they've kind of backtracked and changed what they're recommending now. They're recommending a Fertrell, makes a grazer's choice mineral that's higher in magnesium. Calcium has something to do with magnesium as well. So the equation is, and potassium, it's K, potassium over calcium plus magnesium. So if you're upping calcium, you know, that can help here as well. But basically on the green, lush pastures, your potassium goes through the roof. And then that ratio is what you're paying attention to. So, you know, practically speaking, what do we change? What do we go to? Well, you know, I'm looking at the magnesium analysis on this kelp now and looking at everything with a fine-tooth comb. Well, it's less than 1%. It's 0.83% magnesium in kelp. And there's virtually no magnesium in the salt that we're adding with it. And that's all we're putting out. So my animals have, depending on, I guess, what's in your pasture as well, but my animals have virtually no magnesium that they're getting. And so this issue here, this just is highlighting a deficiency, I believe, is what's happening. And so in the short term, the solution for me is we're putting out magnesium sulfate, getting that into the water. Now, adding magnesium sulfate works, but it's not palatable. And so there's a risk here that the cattle may not drink as much water. And so we're watching that. They are consuming plenty of water with the hay. So we're upping those magnesium levels with the magnesium sulfate. I have also contacted Fertrell, reached out to them. And so we got to talking, you know, back and forth, and we've landed on Fertrell's sheep NutriBalancer. Their NutriBalancer is what we are going to try. It has 8% magnesium. I'm going to continue adding, you know, magnesium sulfate. Getting a little too much magnesium is not going to hurt us. So we're changing up the mineral regime here, and I wanted just to let everybody know, you know, if I've put videos out saying, I'm sure I've mentioned our kelp and salt and how simple it is and yada, yada, yada. Well, it's not enough if you have magnesium deficient pastures. And this issue with grass tetany has highlighted that. Learn from our mistakes. This was almost a 2-year-old heifer. She would have been reproducing for us. You know, got to find a way to move on here, to let that go, to regroup, and we will. It's a tough loss, but you know, this is farming, and I know a lot of my videos I try and keep them upbeat and positive, and but there's a reality here that I want to show too. It's not all great out here. There's a steep learning curve, and the stakes are high. This is our well-being. You know, when you have a setback like this, it's just important to persevere. We'll keep you posted on our actions from this point on with the grazing program. So. It is Thursday. It's been a week since our incident out here with the young heifer. It took me a little while, but I've got them back out on the pasture now, and just been able to think through this a little bit more and you know, read more about grass tetany. It seems like there needs to be a stressor, something environmental to kind of set them off, and I really think it was the heat that day that we were dealing with. But I think that like the drooling and whatnot, I think that had to do with the heat actually. And you know, no shade out here on paddock 2 and 3, so we're gonna need to work on that for next summer. But in the meantime, you can see everybody is, especially cattle, just loving loving life out here. That's what I want to see. Everybody down, ruminating, and taking life easy. We got a great day out here, temperature-wise today, low 70s, hardly any humidity. We have those since the incident. I have taken soil samples from out here, and we've sent soil samples in, and I've also taken a forage sample, and we've sent both those off, overnighted those to a lab. I want to get some actual quantitative readings here, and I think that should help us a lot. So things are moving in the right direction. Just want to give a quick update, and if you made it this far through the video, thanks for watching, and we'll keep you in the loop here.